good whatever time of day it is for you right now. Don't know when you're watching this, but welcome to the show, also known as the current state of the world. Hello, I am Nicole, and I'm your host for today's wonderful webinar entitled We've Got This. What is it that we've got, Nicole? Well, ideally, by the end of this, you should have a bit more sanity and ideas that you can implement into your business to ensure that your bottom line is also healthy and has got this. This obviously being the operable word for keeping our business afloat and healthy during the nuttiness that is the current state of the world. Ideally today, guys, we want to leave feeling like we can do this. We want you to take one thing back to your facility that you can implement to improve it during these times, both of COVID and lockdown, and once lockdown is lifted. To note, a lot of the ideas, you guys, that we're going to present in here are feedback, input, and ideas from the 500 plus craft establishments that we work with across the country. So while I'd love to take credit, a lot of this is going to be from them. All right, here is how we are going to do this today. We're going to cover a few topics. What do we do now? And how do we prepare for post-lockdown times, aka the new normal? Also, new drinking game alert. Unprecedented is now going into retirement as the start of the drinking game, aka drink every time you hear it. And new normal can be inserted in its place. So every time I say that, feel free to take a drink of your delicious libation that happens to be sitting in front of you. I'm super amped to share a lot of this awesome information with you guys today regarding the lockdown and our new normal. Before we start, I just want to say this, that looking for the positive doesn't mean overlooking faults, aka how crazy it is and how challenging this is. But being a positive thinker also doesn't mean that one has to agree or to accept everything. We can still be frustrated and sad, but what positivity does mean, guys, is that a person is solution focused. So we are literally holding our cheeks up for a smile, and we're also flexing. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is that flex and that solution-focused attitude. So I can't tell you the amount of times I heard the word panic, and if it wasn't said, it was seen. So the definition of panic, guys, is the sudden uncontrollable fear or anxiety, often causing wildly unthinking behavior. For some of us, that might have been in the form of 8 beers. Listen, this is not a panic situation, guys. We're going to bust out those muscles and flex, because a panic situation would be uncontrollable. And here we do have the ability to resume some control. It's just a matter of where and how. So the only thing sudden that we should be doing is moving to action. And that means right now. So let's talk about those things that we can control. Conference after conference, you guys, for the past few years, we've all heard that the industry is slowing. We're having an increase of closures. And I think COVID exploiting this, and that it's also showing us how intentional and how much effort we need to put toward our business to drive traffic to us, even more so than what we were hearing prior. This really means sitting down and analyzing, guys, what the priorities are regarding actionable control items, and we need to be intentional about how we execute those. COVID is bringing a close to the make it and they will come brewscape, and is now make it and stay woke, okay? What we can control and what we can't control are two very different things, and we need to segment those out already. So while I'd love to make this a motivational speech, I'm going to try not to, but do remember that successful people spend 10% of their time focused on the problems and 90% of their time on the solutions. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's get to work. All right, so let's talk about those things that we can control right now. We have a whole list here, and you guys might be doing some of these things already. But ideally, what I challenge you to do is to sit down with your staff and other owners, whoever's going to be helping you to make these decisions, get them out on paper, and not only create a checklist, but put a numeric value next to each, meaning prioritize that list. We really want to start to nail down what we need to prioritize and in what order. That seems to bring that calm to us when we can come up with a plan and really focus on what we can control. Because what we can't control, if we focus on that, is going to eat you alive. But if we focus on the things that we can control and start to execute that list in the order that we've defined, there will be a plan and it will help you to carry on in the future once all of this ends. So what can we do now? What can we control? Do takeout? Yeah, do takeout if it makes sense for you. If you are already doing this, that's awesome. If not, there are some awesome resources that are available to you that are not particularly expensive to help you do so. Hint, hint, shameless plugs. Some companies aren't charging you to host to-go platforms, so definitely know what your resources are there if you thought it was going to be too expensive for you. And while takeout is the obvious answer for us to sort of adapt to the climate that we're currently in, it's only one of the ways that we can sort of drive traffic. So I wanted to share some of the other hand-curated ideas from other clients and other friends that we have in the industry as to what they are doing. Oh, and let me give a quick disclaimer that what's legal and permitted in one state per their regulations might not be in another. So if you're sitting here going, Nicole, we can't do that, by no means am I encouraging you to break the law, okay? So let's start with partnerships. Partnerships. A lot of us have fantastic partnerships or good friends that are in our industry. And I don't know if this is so much of a new normal for us or something that we've always been doing, but I think the key word here is leverage those partnerships. Make sure that you guys are really trying to drive traffic to each other's facility. So we saw this at a local tap house in Arizona where they actually were giving away a $5 gift card for the coffee shop down the street when people bought a certain portion of inventory from the tap house itself. So that way, the following morning, after people drink the delicious beer that they got from Lovecraft, they now are going to go to 32 Shea in the morning and pick up a coffee. You feel me? And you know they're going to spend more than $5. So this is a fantastic way to leverage those partnerships and really try and drive traffic to each other's facilities. We've seen the same thing with social media. Super cool, you guys. There are breweries calling out other breweries. There are other random businesses that are calling out breweries too and trying to drive traffic to that. Maybe lean on your allied partners even to help promote some of your stuff. But really think about who your community is, who those cheerleaders can be for you, and see if you guys can't get some traction on your social media or whatnot by marketing each other. Okay, educate. I'm super passionate about this one, and you'll hear me say it later. I do believe that customers are resilient and flexible so long as they know what the expectation is and how to do something. This is a perfect example. This is from Berry House Brewing in Florida. They did this really beautiful social media post and they posted it multiple times. They obviously have done a lot right when it comes to layout and making it really simple and easy for customers to understand how things work, but also they've posted this multiple times. Please make sure that you are posting this on a regular basis as to how things are going to work from a curbside takeout or delivery perspective so that customers know how to do it and it's really easy for them. If you've posted one time in March and then you haven't posted again, either throughout March, April, and now into May, please make sure that you are posting regularly. Your customers are not going to scroll through your feed down 2 months to know how to place a takeout order. So that's something that should be posted as a static image or a static instruction on your website very clearly at the top. And it also should be posted often on whatever outlets you use for advertising, including social media. Virtual engagement. This is such a cool topic, you guys. Virtual engagement is sort of a forced hand for us to continue to pull our community together in a way that is safe and that keeps people healthy during COVID times. And man, has there been some super creative ideas around this. This one is a beer and chocolate pairing. So customers would come buy their beer, they also get chocolate, and then there is a lead that is going, Jason is the lead in this instance with Denver Beer Co., that was going to essentially take people on a live tasting via Facebook and YouTube. I mean, that is just so cool, you guys. We all know that everyone's stuck at home and is just craving community and craving an experience, and that's a great way to do it. Think about bringing the tap room home to people. How can we do that? And if you need inspiration, you guys have friends across the country that own other establishments that are just like yours. So reach out to them, see what's out there, and implement that into your facility. So that virtual engagement, if it's feeling sort of heavy for you right now to lead like a Facebook Live or something like that, bringing the experience can come in different forms too, guys. It doesn't have to be you guys doing a Facebook Live and leading this show. You can come up with creative ideas as to how to use your ingredients or include particular marketing in boxes or in the packaging that you use. So Buxton, for example, Brewing out of Texas, they actually created pizza kits for people so that customers could then grab a beer, take a pizza kit home, bake that pizza with their kids who they're cooped up with. And that gives them sort of this family activity to do at night. And that's really bringing the experience home with them. We had another site do cupcake kits for the spring. So also a great idea. I heard of another client doing basically a tasting sheet so that when people came in and they got like a mix and match 4-pack, they had like tasting notes, little cards that they would put with each of those beers so that when customers went home and tried the beers, it would tell them what sort of tasting notes they should be getting and etc. So you guys, there's so many fun ideas here. It's just a matter of thinking and taking the time to put the energy into creating this experience for people when they bring the beer home. It's not just about picking up beer, bringing it home. Our beer is awesome, but we also have to bring an experience with it, be it a smaller scale experience or a much larger one. Okay. This idea, talk about an experience, the brew through. I'm going to say, I'm just going to give this disclaimer that for some of you, this might not be feasible in your state, and for some it might. If it is, what a cool way to do a touchless drive-through. Talk about adapting to our new normal. People can essentially order their to-go beer, drive up, and it'll be at the brew-through. Again, Preacher Comforts out of Georgia did a great job of making sure that they educated their customers about this and that this was an option for them. So super, super cool. Lastly, you guys, I know this is the obvious, but I haven't seen it as much as I wanted to, is advertising your germ-free practices. This specific space actually went through and created a video of the different germ-free practices that they're using. So clean pens and dirty pens. You got to sanitize before you enter. They did a seat map and they said everyone sits 6 feet apart when we do reopen. So they're already ahead of telling people how this is going to work. And they're also implementing the things they can now to make sure that people feel comfortable coming in. I definitely think this is what's going to help drive traffic to your facility now, meaning people feel safe coming into your facility. And then I also feel like that's going to continue on once we open as well. So make sure you're talking about those things on whatever outlets that you have. So we're going from talking about all of the beautiful things that people are doing now and the really cool ways that we're engaging customers and getting our products to them. But how are we going to know what to do when restrictions are starting to be lifted and people can come back out? How many people are going to come back out? What type of service do they want? What products do they want? Guys, we are not going to know until we get there. But what can help you execute and pivot quickly is to have a plan. And not just one, have multiple plans. Think about all of the different facets. So that's what we're about to dive into here. Before we get started into that, I want to give this precursor here. Every single state, you guys, is going to open differently with different restrictions. I'm in Arizona. We just got note that breweries can open so long as they are serving food. There are no capacity restrictions and there are no mandated germ practices as of yet. However, in other states, I know that they're doing 30% of capacity limits and requiring that every single employee wears a mask every single day. Has to happen. So when we look at these things, you guys have to know what is going on in your state and accommodate the different plans that you have to those specific restrictions. And I would plan for those restrictions to change as well, right? So while we might only be at 50% of capacity now, that doesn't mean in 3 months or in 6 months that we're going to be at 50% of capacity. So start to plan for those to change as well. This is a beautiful graph from the New York Times, by the way, or visual, I should say, that shows these partial reopenings, the orders lifting and reopening soon, and the shutdowns that are still very much in place. So it's not only necessarily unknown how quickly each state is going to lift its ban and what restrictions are going to come with that, but it's also kind of unknown as to how many people are actually going to come through our facilities when those restrictions do lift. Bart Watson, who is the chief economist for the Brewers Association, put out a fantastic article recently at the end of April, guys. And the title of it is What Will On-Premise Look Like This Summer? And in that article, we pulled out a couple of quotations and specifically around a study that Bart quoted from Data Essential that polled about 1,000 customers. And it stated that 20% of customers, based on their findings, will absolutely dine in right away when restaurants reopen. 39% of customers are considering it, and 41% say no way. 37%, this is really interesting, of those customers that said they would dine in right away said they wanted a faster and more streamlined dining experience. So I don't want you guys to take these as absolutes, right? That, you're only going to have 20% of people walking through your door. Again, I think that's going to vary per state, but it certainly gives us an interesting idea of what we can kind of plan for, or a rough estimate. What's also interesting is that Monday Night Brewing out of Georgia also did a study. They polled their 700 plus customers, and they found that 36% of respondents, these respondents, by the way, were people who had already sort of recently visited a brewery prior to COVID, said they will definitely visit a brewery tap room in the first 2 weeks after bars, restaurants, and breweries open again. 41% said maybe, and 23% said no. So these numbers are really going to be relevant not only for planning for dine-in consumption or on-prem consumption, guys, but it's also important to recognize that people consuming at home is still very much going to be a thing. And I think that's the part of the new normal that people are referring to, is that not everyone is going to come busting out of their home and into your facility once restrictions do lift. So then what do we do? What do we need to plan for? How can we see into this crystal ball of, the 70% of people that are going to stay at home possibly, or 60% or 50%, and then the other remainder that are coming through our facility? What we do know that we need to plan for is sanitized environment sensitivities, and increased at-home consumption or out-of-home consumption, less discretionary income depending on what the economic impact is to your state or to our country, definitely less travel and tourism, and most importantly, guys, a desire for human connection, belonging, and social engagement. People being at home, especially if they're home alone, in an apartment, no roommate or something, these people are so excited to connect with people again. And we have a real responsibility here to reconnect them, and we have the tools and the facility to do it. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. So first and foremost, a germ-free environment. This is stating the obvious, guys, that this is going to be a big topic of conversation going forward and on into the future, AKA our new normal. And future, you guys, I don't think this is going to be a 1 month thing or a 2 month thing. I think this is going to last for quite a bit of time, years. Start looking at your practices. What are the spacing of tables or bar seats going to be? I know in some states, they're actually not allowed to have bar seats at all. If you are in a state that has bar seats, what does that look like? So if you have, a group of 2 people that come in, we know that they can be close to each other because they already have been. They might have been in the car together, etc. Or is it that we're going to mandate that they're 6 feet apart? I don't know. I don't know the answer. That's something that's going to really be dependent on your state and what they're requiring of you. So start looking at the different layouts, maybe draw out a few specs of how you need to rearrange things. Again, I post that too. I talk about some of the things that you're doing for this germ-free environment, including sanitation logs. What's the protocol going to be for people cleaning? Have a bulleted list of the different things that you're going to do. So if you are going to continue to have people like check out and touch a screen, tell people that every single time someone touches it, you wipe it down with like a Lysol wipe or something like that. Make sure that those are published to the public that is coming into your facility so they know what your practices are. Definitely hold your employees accountable to making sure that they're also following those protocols that you're putting in place. Employee protections. This one is incredibly important, you guys. How often should employees wash their hands? Are they going to be wearing gloves? Are they going to be wearing masks? Making sure that they are taking proper care of those things too, and that they are essentially swapping them out for new ones, that we aren't carrying germs over. Cleaning and sanitation supplies right behind that. I wanted to stop here because I really want people to look at their budget for these things. Pre-COVID, we all were doing a great job of making sure to run clean facilities, but that's obviously heightened. With that comes a cost. So if we're going to be cleaning more often, we are going to need more supplies. So my points on here are definitely to reevaluate your budget, both for cleaning and sanitation supplies, as well as employee protection supplies. So if you're going to be supplying masks, gloves, etc., that needs to be in that budget. And also ensure that you are reaching out to suppliers early. We know that there are shortages on a few things, a few being an interesting word, maybe more than some others. So definitely. Okay, so let's talk about the most obvious element of adjusting our environment. That's going to be creating a germ-free environment. Not sure that's actually possible, but you get the idea here. The first thing on that, you guys, is the spacing of tables and or bar seats. Social distancing is obviously going to continue long into the future here. So we need to start drawing out how we're going to place our tables and coming up with those table maps and seat maps as well. I know in some states, bar stools are not allowed at all. So make sure you know if you are or not in one of those states. Understand how that impacts your capacity and your volume so that you can regulate essentially how many people are coming through that door. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but obviously how many people can actually sit down is really going to impact, and how far apart they need to be is going to impact how many people can be in the space. Sanitation logs, guys, I would definitely display these out in the open so that everyone that comes through the door knows how often you're sanitizing. They feel confident that wiping down every single table every 2 minutes or what have you is on your radar. I would even have a bulleted list of like your sanitation practices that's out in the open. You could post it in your bathrooms as well. We all know that's where we have some captive audiences. So definitely make sure that you're making it public to people as to how you are making sure to keep the germs at a very, very limited amount in your facility. Employee protections, this is a really important one, guys. We need to make sure that our employees stay safe and healthy as well. So start thinking about how often you want them to wash their hands. Are they going to wear gloves, masks, etc.? And with that, obviously, is going to come a cost, which comes to my next point, which is cleaning and sanitation supplies. So not only are we going to need to plan to budget for our employee protection supplies, our PPE there, but we also need to plan for an increase in any cleaning and sanitation supplies that we have. So if we're cleaning more often, we know that we're going to have more supplies that are needed. So make sure to allocate and understand how much money is going to be needed for that. And then second to that is I would start reaching out to suppliers now, you guys. As you know, there are shortages of some items. So it's really important to get ahead of that so that we aren't 2 weeks away from opening our doors and we can't get hand sanitizer. So really start planning for those and reaching out pretty early. I've touched on this already, but definitely advertise your sanitation practices on every avenue that you have to speak with your customers, so social media, website, etc. One thing that's come up in a lot of conversation is receipts. If you are going to do paper receipts, start thinking about what you can do to make customers feel comfortable. So we saw the clean pens versus dirty pens, but that's definitely something that I think customers are going to be a little bit more sensitive to. One thing I've seen too is the printer is actually on top of the bar now. So the customer takes the receipt directly off the printer themselves so that we're not swapping germs via our fingertips. This next point kind of goes into that cleaning and sanitation supplies budget planning. Who is actually going to be responsible for making sure that the cleaning and sanitation protocol that you guys are putting in place is actually happening? Is it going to be your own employees, or are you planning on having an external cleaning company? If you're planning on having an external cleaning company, that's likely going to be an added cost. And if it's going to be your own staff, there's likely going to be an added cost as well for them to come in earlier, possibly, if it's going to be a longer cleaning process or longer closing process. So start to plan for that. And then lastly, this has come up on a few webinars that we've actually been on already. Building pods or plastic dividers is something that there's a lot of buzz around. I don't believe it's mandatory in any states as of yet, but I do think that there are a lot of people that are considering them. I think I've seen it more in a restaurant sort of space, but that's something that you might want to think about, and definitely make sure that it's not mandatory in your facility. But if it is something that you think is going to make your customers feel more comfortable, that might be something you want to look at putting in your budget as well. So switching gears from making sure that we're having a germ-free environment, both for our employees and our staff, we're going to move into the staffing considerations that live outside of those germs. So real quick, if you guys haven't seen this video, of this young lady serving these people. She has to walk around the tape to keep the distance and throw the stuff on the table in order to get it to the customer. Found it quite funny and quite appropriate for the staffing consideration slide. But we're going to talk about a few more things outside of the social distancing and very clearly the retraining that's going to need to happen to keep our distance and limit germs as much as possible. So the first thing, guys, is symptoms checks. Make sure that you have the relevant equipment that you need. So if you're going to get a thermometer or that forehead thermometer of some kind, and or what questions are you going to be asking your employees? I know in a lot of states this is going to be required, and some it might be optional, but it's certainly a best practice and highly recommended by the CDC. So look into what you're going to need for those. The second thing to look into is if your state is going to require particular certifications like ServSafe. I know for some states they're going to be a little bit more lax, but some are requiring this. So if your employees aren't already certified in the required certifications that are necessary, you're going to want to budget for that and make sure to plan for that. Ideally, you could get them certified before you reopen. If you're already open, you're going to need to make accommodations in terms of scheduling to get those done. The rehiring timeline. This is an interesting topic because we don't know how many people are going to come through our door. So I definitely would plan for multiple scenarios as to who you're going to rehire and at what time, given the particular volume that you're doing or the particular occupancy that you see when you do reopen, so that you can very quickly pivot and rehire if you need to. And then second to that, obviously, is going to be the retraining of the people that you are rehiring. So very much like this video, what different protocols are our staff going to need to make? And then also what is going to be their job and how are they going to do it? So if customers are no longer coming up to the counter to get a beer, what do we need to retrain them on as to how a customer is going to get the items that they've either placed an order for themselves, or are they going to act more as a server role? So we really need to look at if there's going to be some sort of floating model and or retraining for those staff members to know how they're supposed to do their job going forward now. The next piece is an interesting topic as well, because tipping, depending on how you're going to alter your service model, is looking like it might change a little bit. So if we're going to go to touchless payments where customers are placing their own order and they're not really getting a lot of service, they just have a runner that's dropping off whatever it is that they've ordered, my guess would be that tips are likely going to decrease a bit. Hopefully not. Hopefully people really are respectful of COVID and the changes that we've had to make it as an industry, but I would certainly keep an eye on it to make sure that your people are getting paid what they need to get paid. Also, you're on the line, obviously, for any kind of tip credit. So definitely pay attention to that, because it's possible that you might need to increase your hourly wage to make up for the lack of tips that are happening. So keep an eye on that. Delivery drivers, this is sort of kind of a side tangent of staffing, but if you are going to have one of your staff, maybe it's a bartender, act as a delivery driver for you, make sure that you have all of the legal things checked off around that. So call your insurance, make sure that they're on that, etc. The last piece is, it just really loops back in this video, but the deliberate placement of staff per social distancing rules. So some of us will just bring on a few bartenders, they'll be behind the bar and they can help whoever. They don't necessarily have like a zone of the bar that they have to stay in. That is likely going to be implemented in a lot of the states that we're in, meaning staff can't necessarily cross boundaries either. They also have to practice social distancing. So I would start looking at how you're going to do that, especially if like all of the taps are on one side of your bar. Maybe you have one bartender that just fulfills every single ticket that comes in, and then one bartender is responsible for running those out. But I don't think I think that any sort of regulatory agency is not going to want to see three bartenders standing next to each other pouring beers. So the other thing you might implement is when one bartender is filling a beer, another bartender can't come up and simultaneously fill a beer if you guys have a closed sort of tap. If you only have one tap wall, that would put people super close together. Maybe you wait until that one bartender is done and then the next can come up. So those are things to really start thinking about. And when we talk about retraining our staff, those expectations need to be covered in that retraining. Okay, so we just talked about staffing for on-site consumption. And now we need to kind of switch gears to also talking about how consumption at home is still very much going to be a thing once we open our doors back up. So the first thing to focus on, and we've talked about this a lot throughout the presentation, is the ease of to-go order, pickup, and if delivery sticks, that as well. We need to make it really easy and apparent for our customers as to how to order. I pulled Ratio's website right here. They have this great landing page that immediately pops up before you even get to the homepage. Make sure that you have a platform that makes it really easy for customers to place an order and pay as well through the application or the software that you're using for to go. The second point I wanted to point out here with consumption at home is we need to kind of start paying attention, if you haven't already, to where people are shopping, how many trips they're making, and why they're going to that location. What we found is that there's a sensitivity to how many trips or how many locations that people are going to if they are looking to consume at home, meaning they're making one stop at a grocery store and then maybe somewhere else after. So we really need to pay attention to those routes that people are making. And if we aren't necessarily on that route, we do need to look at an advertising budget to pull people in our direction if they are going to make that extra stop. After that, we have product offering. For consumption at home, we are looking at a different product than for consumption on site. That's a very obvious thing here, but it's possible that you need to reevaluate your pricing for your product offering for those items that are being taken home. Likewise, we talked about some of the cool cupcake kits and the pizza kits that people are doing. So that's going to be a different product offering than likely what will be available for consumption on site. The last 2 points, so continued decrease in tourism traffic. One piece I just wanted to touch on here is if that continues, if we still see that slow in tourism traffic once we do have travel bans that lift, make sure that you're targeting local clientele. We're going to talk about loyalty programs in a little bit. I think that's a really important tool to utilize if you are in a tourism heavy area and you now are looking to rely on the locale to actually support your business. Last thing, to go supplies budget. We've talked about other budgets and how those are going to be impacted. Definitely any sort of containers, growlers, crawlers, as we see an increase in this. A lot of us have already planned for this, but if you've been closed for a particular time and you're now reopening, you might want to look at that to go supplies budget and make sure that you have enough supplies to fulfill the demand that's going to come even once we open back up for to-go orders. All right, so even though there's going to be consumption at home, and now we are going to have people in our facility, engagement is still going to be a very important part of what we do. For a lot of us, community is the reason why we opened our facility outside of serving awesome craft beverages. So I want to touch on the first point with engagement. Virtual engagement doesn't have to end once the stay-at-home orders are lifted. We can do both. This virtual craft beer and bingo, shout out to Minor Brewing. It is such an awesome engagement piece. And if you haven't done something like this, I would highly encourage it. They do a great job. They have the instructions as to how people do it. They're incentivizing people to buy beer and play at home. So these virtual ideas don't need to end. And something that I think is really cool is people are already talking about bringing their virtual community together with the community that's in their space. So if they're hosting craft beer and bingo, they're hosting it in their facility and live casting it to people at home. So we're bringing people together regardless of their comfortability levels with leaving their home or not leaving their home. So start thinking about the resources that you would need to execute this. So if you don't have, a really nice webcam that you can maybe do a live cast, that's a resource that we would need. If we need an additional laptop, we might want to talk about that. If you're going to put someone in charge of virtual and on-site engagement in your facility, if you don't already have that person, think about allocating some funds to having that person maybe setting up an engagement calendar for the week. Think about what works in your tap room or what worked previously and what people really loved, and get creative to include the people that are at home. Because the question ultimately is, can we carry these things over to a virtual event? Really, ideally, guys, what we're trying to do here is to have a very safe place for everyone, regardless of their germ sensitivity, so that we can continue to bring our community together, which is what we are trying to do in the first place. So we got this. We're just adapting to our new normal. I just felt like throwing that one in there just so you take a drink. Okay, so we just talked about engagement, and now we're going to kind of switch gears here. to you guys actually engaging into your business. Size does matter. Sometimes I'll have these conversations where people will say, "Hey, Nicole, we're just small. We don't need to look at all of these reports." And I would argue that if you're small, it's just as important as if you're a larger operation. You should absolutely be scrutinizing your numbers, you guys, regardless of your volume, your taproom size, your distribution model. Run your business or it will run you, especially in times where the economy might be reviving itself, or we have a situation where people are hesitant to leave their house in this case, or hesitant to spend money. Make sure that you know your margins. Look at your pricing models. Make sure that you understand where the sensitivities lie. So if people are going to come back into your facility, it's possible that they might be more sensitive during this current context to spend $7 or $8 on a bourbon barrel aged something or other than they would be to spend $5 on a lager that you've created. So really look at those pricing models, look at what you're serving. This third point, we should be doing this anyway, but if you're not already, know your waste. Know how quickly kegs are turning. Know that you are selling through everything that you are making. This is really a time to kind of tighten that up. Make sure that we're not having massive overpours. We really want to collect money for every single ounce of beer that is poured within reason. Of course, we'll have an acceptable amount of waste, but know what that is. Document the results of your events and promotions. This, I don't think, is done enough in our community. I sometimes think we're like, okay, we're going to do trivia. Woohoo! Heck yes, love engagement. Do we know that trivia is actually driving traffic and boosting sales? Do we know that? If you can't answer that question, I would totally implore you guys to start looking at that and say, hey, is this driving results? Is this getting a higher number of engagement and sales of our product? Because if it's not, you might want to look at switching gears and doing an event that your community does value and does get them to come to you versus another site. Last, know your cost of goods and your labor cost. You guys know this, but your biggest cost centers are likely going to be cost of goods and your labor costs, maybe outside of your rent payments, insurance, a few others. But these two are highly important, guys. And when we look at profits and costs, I love this little graph. What we're thinking about is either decreasing costs or increasing profits. And ideally, it's this really beautiful balance of doing both. So if you're not looking at both right now, I would highly encourage you to look at cutting those costs, paying attention to the cost of goods and labor costs, and also increasing those profits. It's really a perfect balance here. So that's a quick reminder on lowering costs, increasing profits, knowing your business, running it or it will run you, and the same thing goes for loyalty. If you are not using a loyalty program, I would highly encourage you to look at the options that are out there. There are tons of them. Some of them are built into the point of sale. This is my shameless plug. This is a Arrive's platform for understanding who our loyalty programs are. But even if you aren't an Arrived customer, you guys absolutely need to be making an effort to drive traffic, right? That's that balloon, that profit, and trying to get people into your facility, getting that up, adding the helium. 83% said loyalty programs make them more likely to continue doing business with certain companies. 69% of consumers say choice of retailer is influenced by where they can earn customer loyalty rewards and program points. And then 50% of consumers change their behavior to reach a higher tier within a loyalty program. Please, 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 you guys, make sure that you are using some sort of advertising platform. And again, I'm going to drive this point home too. Know your ROI on your loyalty program. If you are paying a lot of money per month for a loyalty program and you're not seeing the return, I would take a look at that and I would see how you can either use it differently or find a different platform that will help you get the ROI. If that is a free tool to you or a very low cost tool to you, it's a no-brainer. I would maybe take that same person that's working on events for you or engagement, virtual cool events that you're doing and at-home events. That person maybe can also be in charge of loyalty, sending out offers, communicating to our customers. So switching from the loyalty aspect and really driving customers to want to be in a place that they feel valued, that same sentiment is going to carry over to your service model. People need to feel comfortable, and you have to give them options that feel appropriate for them to get a product even once they walk through your doors, once stay-at-home bans start to lift. The ultimate question that you're really answering with your service model right now is, how would the customers like to get their order, and what options do you have for them? I've had several conversations with people about this in the past week or so. And the one phrase that keeps coming up is touchless payments. How do we avoid customers and employees touching each other or touching other things, is really sort of limiting the amount of germs that we're passing to each other. So the questions that you need to answer are, where are they going to get their order? Are they going to walk up to the bar, speak with a bartender, place their order like they normally would, aka counter service? Or is it that you're going to switch it up and they're actually going to sit down and someone's going to come to them and take their order? Or is it that you are going to employ technology that is going to allow that customer to place the order themselves, and then maybe just a runner comes up and actually drops their beer, or they're called up to the bar to pick it up themselves? Are you going to deliver all items to the table, or are they picking them up? I'm just going to touch on this one more time. This kind of goes back to the training piece that we talked about with employees and really getting ahead of this. Think about if you are going to reallocate bartenders to being runners full-time, or if the bartender is responsible for just running that out. The question that then follows that subsequently is, how does a customer know when their items are ready for pickup if you are not going to have a bartender run it out to the table? So is it that you're going to call out a name? Is it that you're going to tell them to come up to the bar in 5 minutes? Ideally, I don't think you guys are going to want people standing around waiting for their items, right? We still want to maintain that 6 feet of distance. So how are we going to do that? One thing that's come up too is, if you are in a state that is restricting capacity, meaning they're allowing 30% of capacity, 50% of capacity, reservations have come up. Reservation systems are not inexpensive. They are usually a monthly cost. I would look into all of your options. We obviously have an option that's free of cost, that's sort of a workaround, but I want you guys to think about, how are you going to limit your capacity? Reservation systems will only get you so far, right? You're still going to have someone that says, hey, we're reservation only. So next time you come in, you need to make a reservation. You can come in for a little bit. But what's that conversation or dialogue going to look like? Is it going to be, hey, you didn't make a reservation, you got to walk out? Or, hey, we're at capacity, I'm sorry, I can't let you in, but you can try back in an hour. I would imagine at a certain point, if a customer has been turned away so many times, that they would get frustrated and wouldn't return. So I really want you guys to think about sort of the organization behind that. And most importantly, I'm going to drive this home again, educate your customers. Customers are very resilient to change if they know what to expect. If you are not communicating that, and they're showing up to your facility time and time again, and they're not getting the message and they're just being turned away, they're likely not going to come back to you. If you are posting it all over your social media, it's all over your website that you are requiring reservations, and here's the link on a big button as to how to make that reservation, they're much more likely to come to your facility because they know what to expect, they know what the process is, and they feel comfortable in the fact that you guys are taking this seriously and that you have a plan in place that's very easy to follow. So give some thought to these things regarding the service model and how people are going to enter in your facility and what that engagement is going to look like once they're in the facility. So that brings me to my next point of touchless payments. If that's going to be something that you are going to look at, meaning you're looking at switching point of sale systems, or you're looking at adding a feature from a point of sale system you already have, start thinking about these things. If they are going to cost you extra money, plan for those things. Shameless plug for Arrived. All of our touchless solutions are free of charge. But if you are going to invest in technology, definitely know how much that's going to cost you, stating the obvious there. But along with ordering solutions and touchless payments, start thinking about menu solutions. If you are doing printed menus right now, are customers going to be comfortable picking up that menu and then giving it back to you? I don't think so. So are you looking at digital solutions, or are you looking at just having maybe a permanent menu on your counter that can be wiped down and sanitized that customers don't actually pick up? Some people are going as far as doing automatic doors or automatic soap dispensers. So the cost to implement, when to implement, what's the priority, and what's the greatest return or impact to your environment are the questions that you really need to think about when you start thinking about those forward-thinking solutions, aka forward-thinking being these bans lifting and people coming into our facility. Lastly, you guys, no one fails alone and no one succeeds alone, especially in this new normal. Take a drink. The resources and tools that are available to you are free. A lot of them are endless and full of information. First and foremost, the BA and your local guilds, allied partners that you work with, whether that's your insurance companies and you're calling them to talk about your employees being delivery drivers, call those partners, ask them what options are available to you. If you're not liking the answers, talk to other allied partners, your fellow breweries and restaurants, customer feedback, social media, CDC and state resources. Absolutely should be checking those on like a daily basis. Make sure that you're up to date. A lot of the local guilds will partner with some sort of a lawyer or attorney that either works very closely with the state or knows the laws. Definitely reach out to those guilds and talk to those lawyers to know what is being mandated and what's being asked of you if you don't already know. Otherwise, you can go on your state's website and usually they'll have those listed out for you. But this is really the close here, guys. You cannot always control what goes on outside, but we sure as shit can control what goes on inside, guys. We can come up with plans to be ready for reopening, and we can come up with plans to come out stronger than we were before we went into COVID. This industry is one of the most resilient in all of the country, guys, and I know that we're gonna come out well. So may the force be with you always, always, always as we go into this new normal. Thank you guys very, very much for your time. I know it's incredibly valuable, especially right now. Please reach out to us, you guys, if you have any questions regarding Arrived or any information covered in this presentation. We are here to help. Our success truly is your success. And remember that positivity is both a smile and a flex. So flex on, friends, because we've